All right. Let's see. I will call the regular meeting in the Mid-Colonial Service District Board of Directors for November 2nd to order. So we have a roll call.
There we go. Director Binder.
Present.
Director Clark-Peterson.
Present.
Director Mayo.
Here.
Director Orsini.
Present.
President Couch.
Here. All right. Jolene, you want to lead us on the Pledge of Attendance? It's your last chance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So do we have any additions?
We have no additions to the agenda.
Thank you. Let's see. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Thank you.
Director Binder.
Yes.
Director Clark-Peterson.
Yes.
Director Mayo.
Yes.
Director Orsini.
Yes.
President Couch.
Yes. All right, we have no closed session tonight. We do have a public hearing. So, water and sewer rate evaluation and Proposition 218 public hearing. Patrick?
Sure. Can we open the public hearing?
Let's open the public hearing.
Thanks. And I am going to turn it over pretty much immediately to Chris Fisher from Wildan, who prepared the rate study for this, and let him walk through his presentation.
On?
Yep. Let me get my act together here. I'll just you'll advance when I give you the go-ahead. Okay, ready to go? President Couch, members of the board and staff, thank you very much. I'm Chris Fisher with Wildan Financial Services, and here to go through the process that we went through and the results for the water and wastewater utility rate study and financial plan. Go ahead, next slide, please. So the objectives we want to of the rate study included, first and foremost, a full recovery of all of the expenditures, the costs that are necessary for the water and wastewater utilities to operate, to develop a cost-based rate structure that ensures equity among the customers and the different classes of customers, as well as administrative efficiency, and that also incorporates a 5-year financial plan, and also, very importantly, complies with the requirements of Proposition 218, which are mentioned in the staff report, but essentially mean that the rates have to be based on the cost of service, and that we adhere to the procedural guidelines, which means we conduct this public hearing this evening, allow for testimony and submittal of written protests, tabulation of those protests, and if there's no protest, then moving forward with the process. Next slide, please. So the graphic here just kind of illustrates the methodology that we go through and went through in this study to get ultimately to the new rates that we'll be talking about tonight. So the green boxes at the top are kind of the analysis that we conduct to look at historical customer and usage and billing data so that we can develop what the revenues would look like under existing rates looking forward for 5 years. And then the bottom red boxes show how we incorporate the operating and maintenance costs, the costs associated with paying debt service on existing obligations, as well as capital projects and other expenditures to develop what we call the total revenue requirement. And then we compare that total revenue requirement to the revenues that can be generated with the existing rates that are currently in place. And to the extent that there need to be any adjustments, then we proceed over to the blue box to develop new rates to make sure that we can generate adequate revenue to meet those requirements. Next, please. So some of the factors that were important and that influenced the plan that we put together, as with any public utility, water, wastewater utility, operating and maintenance costs increase along with just about everything else it seems like these days. So costs of equipment, supplies, also personnel, that's labor, benefits, pensions, all the things that go along with personnel. And then probably more significantly, and we'll talk about that, the planned capital expenditures over the next 5 years, and even looking out to 10 years so that we ensure that after the 5-year rate period that's being considered here tonight ends, that the utility is prepared for the next 5-year period to come. So some of the more important projects there are listed: the water storage tank, the sewer main crossings on Highway 101, and the Central Avenue water and sewer main rehabilitation. Next slide, please. The graph here shows the kind of a 10-year bar chart of capital projects, and you see starting in 2023 out to 2032. Again, only the first 5 years can be considered for the purpose of setting rates under Prop 218, but we wanted to look at the full 10-year picture so we understand where we are longer term as well. You can see there's a little over $40 million in projects planned for the next 5 years. A little over half of those are related to the water system, 45% related to sewer. And then the 5 subsequent years after that, there's about 24 million in projects. And here the balance shifts, less in water, and about 77% of those are sewer-related projects. So next slide, please. I want to talk about the key objectives here is to understand the current state of the water utilities, what the financial water and wastewater utility, what the current state of both utilities is, what the projections look like under existing rates, or what we call the status quo scenario, and understand where any financial shortfalls exist that might require an adjustment in revenue. So first, let's look at water. Next slide. So the good news here is on an operating basis, if you look at the top of the wide chart there, the projected operating results, the revenues exceed expenditures in each year of the projection period, and that's under existing rates. The black line is the net results. You can see the net results declined slightly over the 5-year period. They're just under $1 million in the upcoming fiscal year, and about $500,000 in 2027. The one that we'll pay attention to the most, and the one that probably influenced what we're going to talk about tonight the most, is the days cash on hand. You can see that we're drawing down on the cash on hand, and that's due to that large slate of capital projects that we talked about on some of the previous slides. You see we start with the black line represents the targeted cash balance, which is 365 days or 1 year's worth of operating expenses maintained as cash on hand. You see by the second year, we're already under that requirement or under that policy objective. And by the 5th year, we're well under it, almost down to no cash on hand without any action. Debt service coverage on the bottom right, you can see that declined slightly over the 5-year period, still stays above the black line, which is the target. And what debt service coverage is the requirement that the commitment that the district makes to issuers of debt or lenders of money to the district, that you maintain adequate coverage over and above your net results to make sure that you have enough money to pay debt service. So in this case, targeted debt service coverage is 1.2 times net results, which means, or times debt service. So you want to have $1.20 of net results for every $1 of debt service that you have to pay. And so we're well above that target, but it does decline over the 5-year period, as you can see. Next slide, please. Take a look at sewer. Sewer looks very much like water. You can see on the top there, the light blue bars, which represent revenue, are exceeding expenditures in every year. And the net result line, that black line, maintains or stays pretty flat all the way across. But again, on the bottom left, if you look at the days cash on hand, that's a very similar picture to water as well. And due to the same factor, the cash balance starts out well over the requirement, declines in the second year, still over the requirement, but not by much. And then by the 3rd year, it's below, and by the 5th year, well under the requirement or under the policy objective. Debt service coverage there is more stable, still well above the 1.25 in all the years, and not really changing a whole lot through the 5-year period. So next slide, please. So let's talk about the cost of service analysis. So once we understand the revenue that has to be generated to meet the needs of the utility, both utilities, we need to conduct what's called a cost of service analysis, which, as I mentioned previously, under Prop 218 requires that any rates for water, wastewater service have to be based strictly on the cost of service. They can't exceed the cost of service, and the rates for different customers have to be proportionate to the impact that they place on the system. So that, and said another way, the cost that it's necessary to serve each customer. So cost necessary to serve commercial customers versus non-residential versus residential, and within residential, cost necessary to serve users in Tier 1 and Tier 2, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about that. So the objectives here are to understand that the total revenues that need to be recovered from the rates. We're going to walk through the cost of service methodology and how we develop that, and how we allocate those costs between different types and buckets, and then how they're allocated from there to each customer class. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the methodology and some terminology. So there's three primary questions that we need to answer throughout this process. One in phase one is how much revenue do we need? And that is developing what we call that revenue requirement that I mentioned earlier. So the analysis that we conduct is called a revenue sufficiency analysis, and the purpose of that is to develop a financial plan that shows for 5 years the revenue that's required to meet the needs of the utility, both for the water and wastewater utility. The second question that we need to answer is who's incurring those costs? Who is requiring the utility to incur these costs in order to provide that service? And so we conduct a cost of service analysis that looks at each class of customer, looks at their historical consumption and demand data, and then assigns net costs out into functional and classification categories to ensure that equity is met amongst the different customer classes. Then the third question that we need to ask is, based on that analysis, what do the rates need to be in order to meet that revenue requirement and make sure that the revenue is collected from customers in a way that complies with the cost of service requirements of Prop 218. So that analysis is called a rate design and develops those rates based on each customer's usage and the benefit that they receive. Next slide, please. So two terms we'll talk about is revenue and rates, and there's a difference between the two. Revenue is the aggregate amount of money that must be generated from all of the users of the system in order to cover the expenses of the utility. And there's revenue for the water utility and revenue for the sewer utility. The rates are the user rates that are paid by customers of the McKinley-Villa Community Services District for water and sewer service. And those rates taken all together for all the different users will generate that revenue number. So when we say there's a certain percentage adjustment in revenue, that doesn't necessarily equate one-to-one in the first year to the same change in rates. Because of the cost of service analysis, some customers may see different changes compared to other customers. Once that cost of service analysis is put into place and those initial year's rates are established, then each year the rates would adjust similar and exactly like the revenue adjustment. But that first, because the cost of service analysis is only done one time. So next slide, please. So based on the analysis that we did and development of the revenue requirements and looking at the revenue needs of both utilities, the slide here outlines the revenue adjustments that are necessary beginning in the current fiscal year and continuing out the fiscal year ending 2027. You see for the water utility, there's 6% for the first 3 years, and then 5% in the fourth year, down to 4% in the fifth year. For the sewer utility, 4% in the first 2 years, and then 5% in the 3 subsequent years out to 2027. Next slide, please. So here is a breakdown for both the water and wastewater utility of what these revenue requirements look like, what they're made up of. You see the first line up there is total operation and maintenance. See for the water utility, it's a little over $3.3 million per year, $2.4 million for wastewater. Debt service for each of the utilities is next, so just under $500,000 for water and a little over $1 million for wastewater. And then a bucket of other expenditures and transfers. That's primarily transfers to the capital fund to pay for capital projects each year. And then that's offset by some other revenues, some various fee revenues and other charges other than rate revenue to give us what our net revenue requirement is. So what that means is for the water utility, we need to generate $4.3 million, a little over $4.3 million in the base year to cover all the costs of the utility. For the wastewater utility, we need to generate $4.2 million, a little over $4.2 million. Next, please. So from here, we take those two revenue requirements for each of the utilities, and we conduct the cost of service analysis to allocate those out to the customers based on a number of factors. So it's not only is it a Prop 218 compliant approach, but it's an approach used throughout the rate industry, if you want to call it that, throughout the state of California and in fact throughout the country. California, it happens to be law. It's the only state that really has a Proposition 218 type of requirement. And so that approach is very important here. And that approach recognizes that different customers place different demands on the system, and those customers should therefore bear costs in proportion to their demands on the system. So the costs are allocated based on a number of factors, whether they're fixed or variable. They're allocated based on the number of customers, also the total flows for water and wastewater within each customer class, and then the demand characteristics or peak and average demand for each of the customer classes. So the next slide, next two slides actually will break that down. We'll look first at water. So you see water, we take and we do what we call a functional unbundling. So we unbundle all those costs and allocate them into what we call functional buckets, if you will, categories based on whether they're related to supply or transmission, distribution, customer costs, or administrative costs. And then we further classify those on whether they are required to serve base demand or everyday average demand, max day extra capacity costs, meaning when there's peak daily demand periods that increased costs are necessary to serve those, and within a maximum day, there are maximum hour costs, and then finally there are customer costs, and those are things like billing and customer service, and those type of costs that are necessary to take care of customer questions and inquiries. Next slide for the sewer utility. Very similar type of analysis, just that the functions of the sewer utility are somewhat different. So here we have collection and treatment, pumping and customer. So we're collecting and conveying wastewater to the treatment plant and then treating that wastewater for disposal. And then we allocate those costs into categories related to volume and capacity, and then strength, meaning that some customers generate effluent that requires different levels of treatment or higher strength effluent. And then customer costs, similar to the wastewater utility, there's costs necessary to serve and take care of customers and bill and collect. Okay, so let's shift gears. Next slide, or you can skip the title slide. We're going to talk about the test year rates and the financial plan. So you can see the chart here is the proposed water rate. So for this is the chart here shows in the top section the monthly base charge or meter charge or fixed charge. So all three of those terms you'll hear used, and they're all synonymous. And they're based on the size of the meter, and that is underpinned by the concept that the larger the meter, the larger demand that a user with that meter will place on the system. They have the potential to draw more water based on their demand, and so the system has to be sized and operations have to be sized in order to meet that potential demand. So starting with the 5/8" meter, which is the typical residential, single-family residential meter, the monthly charge is $20.45, and then you see they increment up to the 8" meter, a little over $1,200. And then below that, you see the volumetric rate. So with the volumetric rate is also called a consumption rate sometimes. That's the amount that a customer pays for each unit or 100 cubic feet of water, or also 748 gallons of water. So for every unit of water or every 100 cubic feet of water under 800, customers pay $2.47. Once they go over 800 cubic feet, then they pay $3.32 for each 100 cubic feet of water. And then similar to before, and this hasn't changed, there's also a pass-through charge since the district does purchase wholesale water from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and has no control over how Humboldt Bay sets those rates. Those are just passed through directly based on what Humboldt Bay charges. Next, so one thing that's different about this study cycle that we went through, as you're probably all well aware, unfortunately, the state is experiencing drought conditions again. Seems like that's a kind of recurring theme. And so assuming that the state imposes drought restrictions and continues to impose drought restrictions, and the district has to take action under its drought ordinance, they will have the discretion to enact what are called drought rates or drought surcharge. The purpose of a drought surcharge is to ensure that the water utility is still able to collect enough revenue to cover the fixed costs and all of the costs that don't change as a result of reduced demand or reduced water sales. So if the district is forced to try and curtail water sales through conservation measures or limiting outdoor watering or outdoor water use, washing cars, those types of things, then the district's going to sell less water, but they're still going to have to cover the costs that are fixed and paying debt and paying personnel and maintaining the systems and all those things. So we created a drought surcharge, which is added in the event that the district institutes its stage 3 drought step, I guess it's called, whatever. And that surcharge would only go into place at that time, and it would be an additional 47 cents for each 100 cubic feet of water used in Tier 1, and 57 cents for each 100 cubic feet of water used in Tier 2. So you see at the bottom of the table there that the fixed charges at the top don't change. Those are the same because those are based on meter size and just based on, those are set regardless of how much water is consumed. But the volumetric rates at the bottom, you see now, instead of $2.47 for each 100 cubic feet of water, it would be $2.94 in Tier 1. And for Tier 2, instead of $3.32, it would be $3.89. And again, that's only if the board has to take action to enact Stage 3 of the drought ordinance and then implement those rates. They're being noticed and approved as part of the Prop 218 process at this time, but they're not necessarily being implemented as a result of anything tonight. Next slide, please. So here you see the proposed sewer rates. They're very, very similar to before. There are changes among some of the classes due to the updated cost of service analysis we did and more updated and thorough strength and flow factors that we got for some of the customers, including the brewery, which kind of changed the distribution of costs across all the customer classes. But probably the one that most people are interested in is the residential, single-family residential, and you see it's the fourth one from the bottom, $3.13, and we'll show a comparison of what that looks like. And that's the volume charge, and then all customers pay the monthly base charge of $35.69 there at the top. So now let's look at some bill comparisons for both water and wastewater, and then we'll look at a combined bill. Next slide, please. So here you see in looking at the billing and historical data, we see that the typical or average customer uses about 100 cubic feet of water in a monthly period, and that's based on a 5/8" residential meter. So the existing charge with combining the fixed charge or meter charge plus the volume charge is $41.70, and it'll go up about $4, a little over $4 to $45.84. Next slide, please. Let's look at sewer. Again, similar setup here. Customers using 600 units or 600 cubic feet of water. The existing bill is $51.93, and it goes up about $2.54 to $54.47. And then next slide, please. This is just a combined bill. So water, wastewater combined bill will go, that 600 cubic feet water customer will go from $93.63 up to $100.31, or a change of $6.68 per month. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at how that compares. You see this is a comparison of some of the local utilities, starting with Manila CSD all the way at the bottom end there, and McKinleyville's existing charges. They'll go up and jump just slightly over Crescent City, but still well below Eureka, Humboldt, and Arcata at the top, and still well below the average. The red line represents the average. The blue and the green are the breakdown between the water and wastewater bill, and you see the bottom five there are pretty closely tied together, and then there's a big jump to the top three. So not a whole lot of change. Like I said, changes just above Crescent City. What we don't know is when these other utilities are going to go through this same process and adjust their rates. All of them will do it at some point. They all do. Everybody does. So at some point that this will change, but this is how it looks today. Next slide, please. So let's talk about how that affects the 5-year plan, what the rates look like over the whole 5-year period, and then ultimately how that changes the financial plan and the numbers we looked at the beginning. So we're going to take a look at the 5-year water and sewer rate path, what those rates look like over the 5-year period. Look at the typical monthly bill over that whole 5-year period. So we just looked at the first year in those previous slides. Now we're going to look at all 5 years. And then we're going to look at the projected financial results over that 5-year plan. So first slide, and there's a lot of tables here. I won't go through all the numbers in detail, but you see the existing rate column there. This is for water. Again, the meter charges in the top section there, starting with the $19.80 5/8" meter, and then the volumetric rates at the bottom. So you see how the charges progress through the period. So the 5/8" meter is $19.80 now, and it goes up to $25.10, or just over $5. The volumetric rate is $1.89 now, and will be $3.04 at the end of the 5-year period for under 800 cubic feet, and then over 800 cubic feet, it goes from $4.73. It actually decreases, and that's due to the change in the cost of service analysis from the last time. So a little bit a change in the positive direction for users over 800 cubic feet. The pass-through is just a projection at this point. We don't know, again, what Humboldt Bay is going to do and what their increases are going to be, and that's just passed straight through with no action by McKinleyville Community Services District. Next slide, please. This is a projection of what the drought surcharge would look like over the 5-year period. Again, not being implemented right now, but it has to be noticed under Prop 218 so that the district doesn't have to go through the same action later to mail notices and conduct the public hearing. So starting at 47 cents now, goes up to 58 cents at the end of the 5-year period. For Tier 2, it's 57 cents now and goes up to 70 cents. And then the bottom two just show what the rates look like with the base volumetric charges and the drought surcharge added together to show what the rates would look like at the end of 5 years compared to the first year. And then finally, next slide, has a breakdown of all of the sewer charges. So you can see the existing fixed charge at the top, or the base charge, is $34.59, goes up to $35.69 in the first year, and then by the 5th year, it's at $42.98, so about $8 over the 5-year period. And then you can see all the various volumetric rates. Residential, again, they're single-family residential, the fourth one from the bottom. You see it's $2.89 now, and by the end of the 5th year, it's up about 90 cents by the end of the 5th year. And similar, next slide, similar information just kind of shown in a little bit simpler format and in graphical format. You can see that this is the combined bill, water, sewer combined. So the combined bill currently is about $93.63. By the end of the 5th year period, the total combined bill will be about $25 higher, $26 higher, or at $121.12. And at the bottom, you can see a graph that kind of shows that in a graphical format, with the green representing sewer and the blue representing the water. Same information. Next slide. So again, just recapping, these are the revenue adjustments we talked about that affected those rates: 6% the first 3 years for water, 5%, then 4%, and then 4% the first 2 years for sewer, and then 5% the final 3 years. And then next slide. This is what the graphic picture looks like now for water, and this is extended out for the full 10-year period. So you can see the net results line, the top, the black line steadily rises over the 10-year period, with the light blue revenues exceeding the darker blue expenditures in each year. The bottom left graph showing days cash on hand, you can see, and we're not able to meet the requirement for days cash on hand in some of those medium years or middle years. But in the years at the end of the 10-year cycle, we're able to get back to that. And that's because we wanted to try as best we could to mitigate those rate increases and keep them as low as we could. If we tried to get those balances all the way up to the black line, the rate increases would have been higher. So it was a decision when we met and presented information to the Finance Committee and discussed with staff and looked at a couple of different alternatives, actually several alternatives. This was kind of the compromise we felt in order to keep the rate increases as best we could mitigated, that the sacrifice would be the cash would fall a little bit below in the interim years. The cash on hand is not a legal requirement, it's a policy, it's a financial policy, so there's no legal requirement or law that's being violated. But again, it's just a policy or an advisory practice. The debt service coverage is well above the requirement. That would have certain repercussions if it was not met, but you can see that's not even close to being an issue there. Next slide, please. Here you can see this is just the numbers that support the first 5 years, that graph we just looked at. Won't read all those to you, but you can see kind of the bottom, that fund balance activity. The beginning balance is a little over $6 million. By the end of the 5-year period, the total ending fund balance is about $2.5 million. And again, that represents those bars going down in that interim period that we looked at on that previous graph. And then in the subsequent 5 years, they go back up to the policy goal. And the debt service coverage is well above the 1.25. You can see in that last row there in the high 2s and then over 3. And that's just sort of a function of how the numbers fell out. Next slide, please. Now we're going to look at the sewer side. Similar picture to water. You can see in the top graph there, the light blue bars exceed the dark blue bars, so the expenditures are being exceeded by revenue, which is a good thing. The black line is mostly on the upswing. It takes a little dip in 1 year due to some high-cost sewer capital projects. You can see the bottom left, the days cash on hand. Again, starts out in the first couple of years well above. We allow it to dip below in the interim period, but by the end of the 10-year cycle, it's back at the policy objective. And then again, on the debt service coverage on the bottom right, in good condition, well above the requirement. Next slide. Again, this is just the numbers that support the first 5 years of that graph that we just looked at. And you can see, again, focusing on the bottom, the fund balance activity. The beginning balance is $6.2 million. And then after deposits from results and withdrawals for capital projects, by the end of the 5th year, it's at $2.2 million. But again, it swings back up in those subsequent 5 years. So that, you know, I should say that, you know, it never, for either utility, never really gets below 200 days. And there is a huge majority of utilities out there that operate with only 90 days as a policy objective. So the district is taking a very strong conservative approach to make sure that it's got money on hand to, you know, to deal with fluctuations in expenses and have money on hand to deal with emergencies without having to go you know, make any changes in the rates. So, and then the final slide is the next steps. So following this presentation here, the public hearing will continue. The board will have an opportunity to make its comments and discussion. The public will have an opportunity to come up and talk and ask questions and provide testimony. Once the public hearing is concluded, the board secretary will tabulate the written protests that have been received. Those protests can be submitted all the way up until the public hearing is closed. Assuming that there are not protests received from a majority of the customers within the district, then the council has the discretion to move forward with adopting the rates. If there is a majority protest, then the proceeding ends. The board can't do anything to override that, and the proceedings will end. So assuming there's no majority protest and the board decides to move forward, then the rates will be adopted and implemented in the new year for the first full billing cycle. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be here obviously for questions, and unless you want anything right now, I'll step away from the podium.
Thanks. Do we have any questions right now, anyone?
I've got one.
Am I on? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. That was very informative, and you guys did an excellent job writing this document. It was pretty easy for me to understand, being a first-term board member here. I do have one question, though, and it might, maybe Director Orsini probably could answer this one. When was the last time that we had a stage 3 drought here in McKinleyville?
Never.
Thank you.
Never. Test.
All right, any other board? Okay.
So, what inflation?
Right.
So what inflationary, what inflator did we use annually for the rates? You know, I know we take the present, we take what we have in reality now, and then we add an inflator to that for year over year to get it. What number did we use for that this rate cycle?
So there were a mix of inflators. Some of the costs, like personnel costs, were inflated, and I'd have to look in the model to see exactly what they were, but based on existing MOUs and rate increase or pay increases and benefit increases that are known.
Okay.
Some were increased based on construction cost index for some categories, and some were based on CPI. So we looked at each category of expenses and applied an inflator that best fit that category. So it wasn't one.
So it was very specific. It wasn't just a
Correct.
Just
It wasn't just a blanket
one
CPI or anything like that thrown over everything.
Thank you. And another question. So that it's clear to the audience, our policy states that we have to have a 365 days of cash on hand, correct?
Correct. That's our goal. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It's a policy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. All right, anyone from the public want to address us?
making sure that's on. Hi, I'm Charlie Caldwell with, I live in McKinleyville at 2437 East Cochran, and you're talking about increasing my rates, and I kind of have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in our community and MCSD. So one of the things I haven't seen in this report is how our new solar plant and our sewer system plays into this system. Our solar system that we just put in was supposed to reduce our rates, reduce your costs, and now I'm seeing my rates go up. So I'm here more for that than I am the cassette calendar. So that's my question, that's my concern, and I don't see it in the report. I'm done.
Thank you. Pat, are you?
So you want me to address that?
Yes.
So it was, the operating costs were factored in the operation and maintenance costs. So your rates actually would have gone up more if we didn't have that solar system put in. So it is reducing on a daily basis whenever the sun is shining, the amount we pay goes down. However, it doesn't go down enough to offset all the other cost increases for everything else. Okay, thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, I think that, do you want to, typically, what is the cost per year? What's the electrical cost at the treatment plant per year?
It's in the range from $8,000 to $10,000 a month.
Yeah, so about $20,000 to $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our budget's over $4 million for the sewer, so it wouldn't even be a blip, actually, so.
So I think it's important that we find a way to make sure that we put that in language that's understandable, clear to everybody. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, if we have no more public comment, we had board comment, I guess we need to,
Yeah, I've got another one.
Oh, you've got another one,
Yeah,
okay.
if we didn't, I assume that we might have some people from the public that wanted to talk to us besides Charlie. Thank you for your comments, Charlie, very much appreciate it. Keep an eye on it, I'm glad somebody read it besides us, so, anyway. The only thing I'd like to say, and is at this point in time, is that if you notice, and I'd like to go on the record with this, is that our rates are going up substantially less than what the inflation rate is right now. We're looking at 4 to 5% per year over the next 5 years, which is a projection that it's not going to, the cost for a pound of bacon has gone up significantly more than that every year. So I just would like the public to realize the thought that went into this, the staff and the board understand that, and that was in the back of our mind when we made this decision to not raise our rates equal with what was going on with inflation. Now there is a risk in that because we're going to be drawing down our cash on hand. So there's an absolutely, this might bite us in the butt before it's over with, but I'm thinking probably, and we're thinking that probably won't, but I would just like everybody to recognize the fact that the comfort of our ratepayers was one of the major drivers for this rate study and how it ended up coming out. Thank you.
thank you, Greg. Well, I guess now we're ready to, anyone know, no one else from public? What are our votes for?
So want to
do I
make
need
sure
to
before
close?
we close the public hearing that
Okay.
if there are any other protests, now is the time to turn them in. Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing.
Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
And we'll turn it over to April, the board secretary.
We're waiting with bated breath. What's the tally?
We have 20 votes.
20?
20.
And how many ballots? And how many ballots went out? Like 6,000 ballots?
Yeah. We needed a little over 3,500 in order to have it.
Were they all in written form?
Yes.
So all the ballots that came in were legitimate, they were done properly, so that,
Correct.
and if there weren't any, did we contact those people? Or were there any that didn't
There were
follow
none.
the directions? Okay, cool.
All right, well, I would say we didn't have a majority protest.
We did not.
So I guess we need to do a roll call vote, is that right?
Well, we need a motion
I need a motion.
to adopt.
I'll move to accept the engineer's report and staff's recommendation for the rates.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Clark Peterson?
Yes.
Director Mayo?
Yes.
Director Orsini?
Yes.
And President Couch.
Yes. Okay, do we have to do that again in 5 years?
Yep.
Okay, well, let's see, consent calendar. Consent calendars are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board of directors at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person requests that an item be removed from the consent calendar, it shall be removed so that it be acted upon separately. Anyone?
Actually, can we go back to?
We go back?
Yes, item
I
C,
skip?
the public comment.
Oh, public comment, uh-oh. Okay, public comment. We gotta open it to public comment. Okay. Oh.
Hey, James, should you be talking to the microphone?
Yes. Check. He initially moved here in 2007 and went to HSU to attend HSU. Shortly after that, he was hired by the City of Trinidad Public Works, which is a very small department, but it included very many responsibilities, including running and maintaining the city's surface water, conventional water treatment plant, distribution system, and other responsibilities, including cutting and maintaining the city's network of trails, grounds, and that's always fun when we do that, grounds and maintenance at the city facilities, building repair, maintenance, along with many other tasks. He's also currently certified as a T3 water treatment operator and a D2 water distribution operator. Ryan and his wife have been residents of McKinleyville since the 2011, and where they purchased their home. They have 2 kids, 3 dogs, and 3 cats. Much enjoy the outdoors, and lucky to call this place home. On leash. Next one we have up is,
And we poached them from Trinidad?
we don't poach, we don't headhunt, we don't do any of those things. The next one
poach
we have
eggs.
up, Dylan Weir. Don't raise your hand in case I haven't figured out who you are. Dylan has the amazing mustache. Dylan was a firefighter who worked both federal and state firefighting. He did a season with the Bureau of Land Management and a season with CAL FIRE. During these years, he obtained a Class A permit and drove engines around for most of the season with BLM. That is not me. He also obtained his faller's license at BLM and much more. He trained in the academy where he accumulated many certificates related to firefighting and water system training, which gave him prior acknowledged coming into this position with MCSD. The district's very proud to have both these guys working for us. They've been doing great. They're quick learners, hard workers, and of course we expect nothing less, but we're glad to have them on staff. So if you see them around, this is them.
Well, welcome, guys.
Yeah, welcome. I thought you guys might have been disgruntled customers here to complain about the rate study, so.
Same thing as I
So anyway, you'll see me walking. I've got a big red dog. I walk, I wave at all the trucks. So if there's some crazy guy waving at you that you don't know, it's probably me. or in a white Ram, Dodge Ram too.
And I bet you've already seen me walking.
Welcome, guys. I've quit shooting at the truck, so you're okay. Don't worry. Did James, did he give you our addresses? I've got a list here of our addresses. For the first 6 months, you're supposed to come mow our lawns, right? It's just part of the introductory process.
Make sure you tell them off the clock they have to do that.
Anyway, welcome.
Have you ever got that request
Okay, I'll say
fulfilled,
something too.
Dennis?
You're so lucky to work here and work with James. How fun. You have a great bio, so we're very lucky.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I think we're still on, yeah.
We're still
Joel,
public
I just
comment.
want to thank you for being here for the last couple of years and doing what you're doing. And I believe all of you are remaining, right? Appreciate the board. So from a public standpoint, I appreciate the board. I really wasn't complaining, I just didn't see it in there. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Charlie, I think, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, I think I'm gonna pester Pat in his copious free time to figure out a way so that we can kind of have some sort of running idea of what's going on with that. So because it didn't show up in the rate study, I think we're all interested in seeing the performance of it. And so once it's up and running and we get some good, might not be now that it's up and running and it's winter time, it might not be the best time to gauge on how well it's doing. But I would also like to see us do something so that we could access on the internet if that's at all possible at some point in time, but I don't know if that is or not. With the look I just got from Pat, probably not.
Yeah. Yes, we don't want people messing with our solar system on the internet, but yeah, we do, that is our intent. And one of the issues right now is, you know, how PG&E bills behind. And so we're trying to catch up and figure out, okay, what is related exactly to the solar operations and stuff. But as soon as we get all that sorted out, we will report back to the board and the public how much money we're saving.
Yeah, because like the solar, the photovoltaic system that they have at Eureka Natural Foods, they've actually got a screen up and it tells them what's going on there. That's not, you can't change anything. It's not, you know, we could have stuff on the internet that's not, they can't, so that somebody can't turn off our photovoltaic. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, and we're not really going to save any money until the batteries come on because we're not going to be getting that good rate. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Okay. That does it for public comment? No one else has any? So now we'll move to the consent calendar, as I tried to do earlier. So I won't read it again. We'll just do the consent calendar as a block. So, anyone want to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move that we approve this consent calendar as it is written.
Second.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Clark-Peterson?
Yes.
Director Mayo?
Yes.
Director Orsini?
Yes.
President Couch?
Yes.
Don't turn it down, James, because I'm going to talk soft the next time.
All right, we get to move to continued new.
Dave isn't here.
Continued a new business. E1, recognize Joellen Clark-Peterson for her service to the McKinleyville Community Service District Board of Directors. And April.
So this year, the district will be saying goodbye to one board member, Joellen Clark-Peterson. Board member term expires the first Friday of December at the end of their term year. The last board meeting for Director Clark Peterson will be tonight, November 2nd, 2022, as her term will expire December 2nd, 2022, and the next board meeting in December is on the 7th. Director Clark Peterson was sworn into office on December 9th, 2020, and has served on several board committees during her 2-year term, including the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission, Humboldt Area Fund, alternate to the McKinleyville Senior Center Liaison, and the Environmental Matters Committee. During this time, she has proved to be a valued and dedicated member of the board who constantly worked for the benefit of the district, its ratepayers, and the community of McKinleyville. So staff recommends the board review the material provided, take public comment, and recognize and thank Joellen Clark Peterson for her service to the McKinleyville Community Services District Board of Directors.
Thank you. Anyone from the board?
Well, I'll start off. I recognized you when you came in, so that wasn't a trick. But I wanted to thank you too, and I know we talked before you decided to run and appreciated that. And I didn't get a chance to say this at our joint meeting when we were talking about things, that extra work that we all do. You have written some really, really nice articles about the district and district employees, and that's really a big deal, and I really appreciate that. And I hope you would consider periodically to continue to do that.
Possibly, yeah. Well, jump in, just say thank you, everybody. The board, the staff, the community wouldn't have been here if a neighbor didn't ask me 3 weeks before the deadline, do you want to do this? And I said, okay, otherwise we might have had an appointing situation. But learned a lot, an amazing, solid board. I mean, you know this stuff, it's your field. You are the MCSD, you're a great student and detail-oriented. You're classic McKinleyville Dennis, great at politicking.
Hopefully that's good.
Yeah, totally. This board has so much character. I really enjoyed it. So thank you. And then the staff, you're such experts and dedicated, and you look forward and you're not short-term. And I was just living in naivete before I got on the board and had no idea what it takes to run a community services district, and that we could be in faulty waters if we didn't have the right people at the helms here. So feel very lucky, and Jim, I thank you for stepping in, and I'm glad you'll get this opportunity as well. I wish more and many people would get in here and see what it's like and what it takes. I have much greater appreciation for my quality of life now, so thank you. Onward. I'll miss this group of people.
Yeah, John, thank you very much. People think that the board, it takes you a few hours on a Wednesday night once a month, and there's much more to it than that to become a student of MCSD. So thank you very much for spending the last 4 years getting up to speed and being in focusing on governance and not politics. It's very important, and I think that when you can recognize the difference between those two things, it makes you much more effective as a board member. And I'm just very grateful that you've spent the last 4 years with us. So thank you very much.
2 years.
2 years. 2 years. Oh, it seems like
Sometimes
4.
it felt like 4, but otherwise 2 months. But yeah.
2. I thought you were shooting me. I thought you were shooting me the opposite of the.
I know.
I was going to say, you know what that means? Over the ocean, though.
I'd like to say thank you very much for your service on the board. We were elected at the same time. I was a committee member on what was then known as the RAC, Recreational Advisory Committee. When you became an alternate on that under the presidency of Director Mayo, and you took the initiative to ask me one time to go out on a walk with you so that I could fill you in on the ins and outs of the RAC committee so that you'd have a head start on it. You know, I thought that was a pretty nice thing to do. So thank you for your service, and it was a pleasure.
Okay, picture time.
Thank you, Pat.
We do have a certificate and flowers and would like to get a picture of Joellen with the board. That's all right, I did.
All right, our next item is E2, consider approval of the memorandum of understanding between McKinleyville Community Service District, Pacific Union Parent Teacher Organization, the collaborative provision of dances for middle school youth. And that is Leslie.
Okay. Prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the District Parks and Recreation Department regularly hosted dances for middle school students in Humboldt County. Currently, the Parks and Recreation Department does not have enough staff to host these dances. Pacific Union Parent Teacher Organization reached out to district staff with an interest in having dances provided for middle school students again. After several meetings and discussions between district staff and Pacific Union PTO, a plan to collaboratively host such dances was drafted that has a mutual benefit to both organizations and a direct benefit to the youth in our communities. Pacific Union PTO will provide adult chaperones for dances, limiting the personnel costs to the district for this program. The PTO will also be responsible for running and managing the concession stand during the dances, for which they will be responsible for all costs and tasks, including shopping. As such, the PTO will receive all revenues from concessions. The district will provide 3 staff for each dance and be responsible for ticket sales and maintaining a database of students who attend. The district will also be responsible for contracting a DJ for the dances. Net revenues from ticket sales will be shared equally between the district and the Pacific Union PTO. The MOU between MCSD and the Pacific Union PTO can be reviewed in Attachment 1. It outlines the responsibilities of each organization and the split of the net revenues for each dance hosted. If approved, the first dance will be scheduled for December 9th. For some reference, the fiscal analysis between fiscal years 2018-19 and 2019-20, the average net revenue from each dance was $1,586, excluding concessions. Average revenue from concessions was $204 per dance. Given the reduction to paid staff and the reduced time required by recreation coordinator in shopping, staff scheduling, and staff training for dances, and estimating ticket sales to be 250 to 300 tickets per dance, it is projected that the total revenue for each dance will be approximately $2,850. The district's portion of 50% of the total net revenue would be $1,425 as an estimate, which is just slightly less than the average revenues received prior to the pandemic. Staff recommends that the board review
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Staff recommends that the board review the information provided, discuss, take public comment, and vote to approve the MOU between MCSD and the Pacific Union Parent Teacher Organization for collaborative provision of dances for middle school youth in grades 6 through 8, and authorize the general manager to execute the MOU.
Thank you, Leslie. Questions?
So we are going, so we're going to provide three staff and then also do the ticket sales. So I just wanted to verify that, so all those expenses will be covered before we split the money 50/50. So what you're saying is our net take on this is actually represented as our net take.
Correct.
Thank you.
What's the cost of a DJ? Is that a big cost, or?
It's 500 per dance.
Really? Well, I think James should do it, and then donate it to the Park and Rec. Huh? It's all right, as long as you're gonna donate it to Park and Rec, it doesn't matter what.
It's pretty cheap.
Is it? Okay. I wasn't trying to call you cheap, James, but, you know, I think that's a lot of money on your end. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, I think that ship sunk many years ago.
Maybe we could talk about that on our next strategic planning session.
I don't think we can afford to pay him what he's worth to do that. But, well, if we have someone to do it, we're set. All right, let's see. If we'd have no more comments, does somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Director Binder?
Yes.
Director Clark Peterson?
Yes.
Director Mayo?
Yes.
Director Orsini?
Yes.
And President Couch.
Yes. I was gonna say, dances are really well attended when you have,
Yeah, they
it's a really a popular thing, so.
Yeah.
Yes, they're hugely popular. We miss being able to have them. Our part-time employee pool is very tiny. So, yeah, Kirsten, our rec coordinator, is very excited to be able to offer them again.
So how did this evolve, or how did this come to fruition for Pacific Union? How did they get in, come to McKinley?
So Kirsten is the board president for the McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce, and the executive director for the McKinleyville Chambers is on the Pacific Union PTO, and so it came up in one of their meetings, and Jesse, the chamber executive director, was like, hey, I know the people, we might be able, let's start a conversation, so.
Oh, cool. And, it's really cool the way we can cross-pollinate and how we create these partnerships. Who'd ever thought that a school district from Arcata would want to partner with a McKinleyville school and do this? So anyway, it's great. It works out great. And just having kids that have gone to that place is in the fire marshal's not here, so that place is so full of kids. It's just the hormones are just dripping off the walls when you go in there. It's so gross that you don't even want to breathe when you're in there. But they're having so much fun. They have so much fun, and 99% of them are very low maintenance, and it always turns out to be really cool. So I'm glad that we can start doing that again. Keep the little monsters off the streets.
There's been other collaborations too between Arcata and McKinleyville. The RMAC band comes to mind, and I was part of that for a while.
Okay, item E3 is acknowledge the Special District Leadership Foundation, SDLF, District of Distinction Award, and April is doing this.
Special District Leadership Foundation, SDLF, has created the District of Distinction Accreditation as a way for districts to highlight their prudent fiscal practices along with other areas important to effectively operate and govern special district. Each District of Distinction recipient must first be awarded a Certificate of Transparency, which the district received at the Fall CSDA Conference. Additionally, board directors and staff must complete state-required ethics and sexual harassment training, as well as attend a minimum of 6 hours of basic governance training courses. The board policies and procedures are reviewed, as well as annual financial statements for the past 3 years. The District of Distinction accreditation is renewed every 3 years. It used to be 2 years. And this award highlights the hard work of MCSD's board and staff. So staff recommends that the board review the information provided, take public comment, and celebrate the SDLF District of Distinction Award to MCSD for 2022 through 2026. Actually, it should be to 2025. And I was hoping that we would have the actual certificate in time for the this meeting, and it has not been received yet.
Hey, what did you bring back when we went down there, Greg?
That was the certificate of transparency.
Oh, okay.
That's the first step before the District of Distinction.
So, again, it's a very meaningful thing, and it's not just the award, it's the effort that the entire board makes to make that happen. Also, when we were talking with our mixed group last week, or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I mentioned some of the things that we do that's extra, that John Corbett has done, that I've done, and time just got away, and I didn't get to say how much work and how important the work is that Director Orsini has done. And most of those people don't realize that Greg was the president of California Special Districts Association, and that's exponential in what that means to this small district and our influence throughout the state as far as policies that affect special districts. Also, President Couch is on LAFCO, local and state, and it all ties together in the fact that that is, all of us came to this board, this district, on the back of other hardworking people who had a vision and did it right and has passed that on. And I'm happy to say that we have continued doing it right and actually upped the bar. And so this is a really, really big deal, and I don't think people really understand throughout the community what a really big deal this is. So thank you to all of them.
Thank you, Dennis. Kind words.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize April, because if it wasn't for April herding the cats, I don't know, is that wrangling or cowboying, herding the cats?
It's scattering cats together.
To get all the, to make sure we all get everything that our requirements are all done, and that everything gets all put in the right place, so that we can get this, and it's not an easy task to be able to coordinate that and get SDLF all the information that's required to be able to get this recognition. And then there's a recognition, and I think the board, while I was still interim GM, I think the board kind of gave us a directive that they wanted us to participate in the transparency certificate and the certificate of excellence. And so that's something that we've been doing now since like 2013. So, you know, we're going on almost 10 years of doing this.
We're a multiple recipient of this award.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It used to be every 2 years. Now it's 3 years.
Now it's
So.
3 years, yeah.
So thanks, April.
You're welcome.
I know she had to bother me a few times to get my stuff done. I'm hoping she'll forgive me because I recognized her tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Good on that. Okay. Well, I think we can move to reports. And we will, active committee reports, Parks and Recreation Committee.
Nothing to report.
Report. Area Fund.
Did not meet.
Redwood Region Economic Development Commission.
I attended the REDEC meeting on the 24th of October, and their guest speaker was Beth Burks, the executive director for HCOG. And she gave a presentation on the regional efforts integrating housing and transportation. That was very interesting. It showed how they are leveraging a one-time grant from the state REAP program, Regional Early Action Planning Program, aimed at helping local governments reach the housing production goals. And so she showed how HCOG is integrating not only what they do with their transportation infrastructure plan, but also how this fits in with their plan in its entirety. Other than that, the only other action that they had was to write a cheerleading letter to PG&E and other places saying, please fix the power capacity issues down in southern Humboldt. That's that.
Thank you. Next is the McKinleyville Senior Center Board liaison.
That would be me again, of course. The McKinleyville Senior Center had a good time since we last saw you. We were underutilizing our space on Mondays, and more filling in our health and wellness segment of our programming. We're now offering one day or once per week meditation on Mondays from 11 to noon, and then from noon until 2 we have a certified massage practitioner that's volunteered her time to give seated massages in the other room. So this is all free of charge to the public. Donations will be gladly accepted, and no one will be turned away due to lack of ability to pay. Also, later on this month, the Humboldt Senior Resource Center is catering a Thanksgiving luncheon for our program participants, funded by Greg Orsini and his friends at the Mad River Rotary. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and the Rotarians will be serving.
Good. Prime rib? Turkey.
Oh yeah, and
I
also,
wasn't referring to you, that's what we're gonna have. I know.
and also we're doing two mornings a week of senior empowerment through technology. And it's something that a guy by the name of Bob Garino and I are doing on Thursday and Friday mornings, helping seniors navigate the digital age through their newfangled handheld devices and their laptops, and basically teaching them, how to enrich in their lives through the internet. So, yay, onward and upward.
Okay, next we have the Audit Committee. Do you have anything?
No, I don't think we met. When's our next audit meeting going to be?
We're working on putting together a meeting for late November, early December.
Yep, I was going to, since I've got you on the mic right now, I was going to ask you, well, when you did your your department head report, how are things going with getting the numbers that we need from the county?
I'm really happy to report that I got the reports I needed yesterday from the Auditor Controller's Office. So I'm
Awesome.
getting that data entered now and going to be sending that information to our auditor. And so we're a little behind schedule from last year, but not very much.
Very good, thank you. And the numbers are probably correct this year, too.
No, he didn't say that. Okay, next we have employee negotiations, and I think we have nothing to report there. McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee,
Well, we were all there, so I don't think we need to belabor that anymore.
okay?
Only thing I would add is if any of you are listening, and I made the suggestion, it's really important, the relationship and defining that parameters for that group. And one of the things that we brought up was it's very important for understanding the parameters of that group, or one of those members to be at our meetings on a regular basis. I think that's important for their continuity and their support for us. One of the main, one of the most powerful things the MCMAC can do is be additional support for MCSD. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, next we have Humboldt Local Agency Formation Commission, which is me, and we did not meet, so nothing to report. Next we have an Environmental Matters Committee, which is Jolene and I, nothing to report. Then we have the Ad Hoc Committee for the Community Forest. Anything from?
We didn't meet, did we? Have we met since last meeting?
Yeah, we met in October. Yeah, there was not much to report on.
Oh, that's right, we
were
did
just-
meet.
Yeah, I gave you an update on our conversations with Green Diamond. And
So we're still negotiating with Green Diamond for the rights of access on the central and southern parts of the community forest. And as of right now, that nothing has come to that, and you guys haven't met since that.
correct, we do meet with them again next Monday.
I need to talk to you about that. We're talking to Otto.
Okay, next we have legislative and regulatory reports. Any, Dennis, do you have?
Yeah, I got a couple things I wanted to
Okay.
bring up. One was you ought to look at the LOCO discussion on the PG&E issue. It's in-depth enough that you get the understanding that there was no good answers, and that PG&E's been aware of this issue for quite some time and is kind of playing, wouldn't be a nice way to play it, kind of playing dumb. Geez, golly, shucks, oh, yeah. And I think they've got a pretty good idea on where they're actually going corporate-wise, but not letting us all know. So we're in some really, we have a significant issue with capacity, and that's going to affect all of us here too, on all of our stuff and the growth and the amount of growth we're going to have in the future, which always has been a concern of mine on all of this Green New Deal movement towards certain types of investments and diminution in other types of energy. John Corbett and I spent quite a bit of time haggling with folks over the fact that we needed to continually keep our access to natural gas, or propane or natural gas for the district. The options that we have for diesel use, that moving towards electric vehicles is a fine thing. They have their positives and negatives. So anyway, I think that's, you know, if you're interested, you ought to read that and keep that in mind as we move forward in the next year or two about what directions the 350 group and other groups might want to push us in terms of our support or lack of support for some of these initiatives. Just from my perspective, our job here is to look out for the district. And so that's the way I view it. Anyway, and then also something that I participated in already, and Association of California Water Agencies had, through years of working on the Headwaters Forestry Bill, fire suppression went federally, and not Headwaters here that people think of, our local headwaters, but the headwaters in California of you know. So we've commented to this. It's a North Coast Resources Partnership. It's a vision of North Coast resilience, priorities for enhancing watershed forestry community resilience in the North Coast region. The plan was made possible through support and guidance of the California Department of Conservation Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program, which I've been kind of functioning in through AQUA. And it's funded through a climate investment money. The draft was informed by hundreds of partners, technical experts in the North Coast region beyond, including North Coast tribes, NGOs, RCDs, agencies, cities, counties, private citizens, and businesses. The plan aligns with and is guided by objectives for the California Wildfire and Forestry Resilience Task Force. So there's a lot more to that, but what I wanted to say is that North Coast Resource Partnership is seeking community and partner input on draft vision for the North Coast resiliency, and I will make that contact info available to Pat if anybody wants it. You might find it interesting, you might not, but if you care to take this survey and participate, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, Greg?
So the California Special Districts Association Legislative Committee met. We had a meeting last Wednesday down in Sacramento, and we went over we reviewed our major policy issues that we're going to focus on for the next year, and infrastructure investments was 33% showed 33% interest. Local revenues 19% interest. Environmental disaster preparedness was 18%. Governance was 11%. Human resources and personnel was 11%. And public contracting was 4%. So we went around and we put sticky dots, and we've not got a chance to see, the meeting ran long. We didn't get a chance to aggregate those and find out what specific legislations that we were going to put forth a concerted effort or more resources towards, but I'll have that soon. But one of the ones that I saw by scanning at them and showed probably far and away the most interest in was the ballot initiative that's going to be on the ballot in 24 for the Prop 218 that will actually be retroactive all the way back to the beginning of this year. So if that passes, we have the potential that we could be, and I've talked about this before, that we could be challenged on our Proposition 218 that we just passed tonight in 2024. We'll be working, CSDA and AQUA will be working hard and putting forth quite a bit of effort in public outreach and things like that, so that people know when that's on the ballot that they should vote no for it. And then also another thing is the CARB was another big one, was the CARB thing for the zero emission vehicle mandate. And just in case nobody, if you're not aware of this, on the 27th they had a public hearing about this. But basically what it states is that the state and local governments, including special districts and state government and all of the local governments, vehicles that own Class 2B and all the way to Class 8 will be required to transition over to zero emission vehicles. And the Class 2B to Class 8 are vehicles between 8,500 and in 10,000 pounds fully loaded. And Class 8 vehicles are 33,000 pounds. We're lucky, there's a carve out for Humboldt County, Calaveras, Colusa, Del Norte, Glen, Humboldt, Inyo, Lake, Lassen, Mariposa, Mendocino, Modoc, Mono, Nevada, Pumas, Shasta, Sierra, Siskiyou, Sutter, Tehama. Starting in January of 2027, 100% of the vehicles that we purchase will have to be zero emissions if this goes down the way it is. And it's even more draconian for the districts that, or the counties that weren't listed. So anyway, that's all I've got. Good news.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, CARB, Humboldt Bay and the munis have signed on to a protest letter requesting changes prior to that implementation, and actually objecting to the implementation at all. But if they do implement it, they need to change a lot of aspects of it.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely putting the cart before the horse. You know, what are fire departments going to do that, you know, that need to replace their fire trucks every few years or every 4 or 5 years? And you know, you got small districts that are running on fire trucks that they should have been replaced a long time ago. And I just saw a headline that they finally produced an electric fire truck. So we have one electric fire truck in the country right now, and in the state of California is going to require all fire trucks that are purchased to be electric. Along with backhoes and dump trucks.
Okay, let's move to staff reports. Support services, any?
The only thing that I would add to my report is, like I said, we did receive the statements from the Auditor Controller's Office for our fund balances as of June 30th. Those statements do not have accrued interest posted to them. The accrued interest for the account actually hasn't been posted for the last two years, so it wasn't there last year either. What the district does in that circumstance is we are allowed per GAAP to estimate accrued interest, and so that's what you did last year, and that's what we will continue to do this year, and that's perfectly fine for us to use that method in a short-term circumstance. And so hopefully our next audit will have we can true up the interest at that time.
And that number's not really going to be material anyway, is it?
It's not significant, no.
Thank you. James, any?
Nothing to add.
Nothing. Leslie?
I do have something to add.
Oh, wow.
Just to bother James. No, Pat and I met with the Godby research team, the one guy, this afternoon regarding the community survey for testing Measure B renewal or reassessment. The feedback we got at the previous board meeting, the directors had requested getting to review the survey questions prior to the interviews. The research team says we cannot bring those questions to a public meeting. An option for having board review of such questions would be to create an ad hoc committee. But they gave us the option of being able to do interviews starting this month, December or January.
And did they say, is it a law or is it something that they just don't like to practice, or what was the reasoning for that?
I think it's bad practice.
Okay.
I mean, they're the experts in doing surveys and polls, and I would imagine that having the questions released to the public in advance might pose some.
Yeah, they're concerned about biasing the poll.
Yeah, I could see if, yeah, now that I think about it, that if we talked about a broad a lot of different things, and we didn't focus in on what the questions were exactly. I could see how that might be a little bit better, but if we were gonna talk about the exact questions that were gonna be asked, I could see how that could get out to the public and people could manipulate.
He did share a story of having done a survey in a community, I think Cupertino, where something got, like, there was wind of what the survey was about, and then the interviewers were being shadowed, and then community members were going to people who were getting interviewed and trying to lobby and sway their answers.
That makes sense.
That is all I have to add.
Thank you. Pat, you have any?
I do have something to add. I don't know if you noticed under the cost savings in my report, the haul trailer with Parks and Rec was rusting out. That's the trailer that they use to haul the mower around, as well as all the equipment, et cetera. And your Parks and Rec director purchased with her own money a new haul trailer. So that is a really large cost savings for the district this month. And I want to thank Leslie for that.
Thank you, Leslie. You're crying.
Well, okay. Let's see.
I did want to make a note that Supervisor Madrone is on as well.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Madrone, would you like to address us?
Yes, thank you, President Couch. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Well, good meeting. Looks like another nice and efficient one. First of all, congratulations on your District of Distinction Award. And as was said earlier, you guys get that often, but it's due to all the hard work of staff and this board and the commitment that you make to your community. So congratulations to you on once again receiving that award. I also want to say that I believe that Director Mayo bringing up the PG&E issue is really good and important. In fact, at our board meeting the other day, it was mentioned by Director John Ford, who had sat down with PG&E at some length and at great detail, along with other supervisors. And there is some question about whether or not they even have the capacity to handle the town center build out. So this is not just a Southern Humboldt issue. It is in fact something that could affect a lot more than that. But at any rate, thank you, Director Mayo, for putting that up there as a highlight of something that people should be paying attention to. Want to commend you on your recent joint meeting with the MCMAC. I was pleased to be there, and I think it really showed the huge potential that the MCMAC and the CSD have in working together in collaborative efforts. So thank you for hosting that, and I look forward to great things from that joint effort. Another issue that was on our board meeting the other day that's going to be coming back to us is the telecommunications ordinance, and something that people ought to be paying attention to is how that might roll out, but not just in terms of cell towers, also in terms of 5G small cell systems that could easily be deployed throughout McKinleyville as well. And it's often been said that we don't do a good job at the county of coming back to McKinleyville, in particular being unincorporated, and seeking the community's input on things that are coming before us. So I just wanted to once again highlight that for you as a board, and also the MCMAC. I will be bringing that to them as well. And perhaps that's a great place to receive community input on, what people think about the ordinance, which will be coming back to us in the not too distant future. One last thing is, thank you, Director Mayo, again for bringing up the North Coast Resource Partnership and the survey on resiliency. That has been a magnificent partnership, bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars into Northwest California. And it's basically a collaboration between the counties from Sonoma all the way to Modoc, including Siskiyou, Del Norte, Humboldt, Mendocino, and Sonoma counties. And so it's an incredible partnership, and a lot of great things are happening there. So yes, please go to their website and join in the survey on resiliency. Other than that, thank you for the opportunity to join into your meeting. And as always, if you have any questions of me tonight or any other issues you would like my help with, please just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody have any board member comments, announcements, reports, agenda item requests? I didn't have a president's report, so, nope, Greg?
Yeah, so this kind of goes with the, we'll be starting on the budget here pretty quick. And one of the things that I was interested in was our fixed costs. If we could have a presentation on fixed costs before we start the budget process or as part of the budget process related to like our liability insurance, what we're looking at, how our liability insurance is going to go up from, we probably already know what it's going to be for the first 6 months of next year because we usually get that at the end of the year. So we'll know. I would like to know what the amount of our liability insurance is what it is and what it's increased. What we're looking at related to PERS, because I'm sure PERS is what's going to happen with PERS with the way the stock market's been performing, and also the impact that that's going to have on our staff, because I believe, if I was reading correctly, that there could be an impact on what the Pepro folks are going to have to pay out of pocket for that too. So I'd kind of like to have that, and then workman's comp, what our experience level is, what where we're at with that, and then also our health insurance. So those basically are all related to the fixed costs that I'd be interested in as we start the budget process.
Oh, thank you.
And that can just be like an information item, or I don't know, board isn't interested, it could be an email too, for that matter, but unless the board would like to have it.
I'm quite interested in that, but I would, with your thoughts on it, I would be happy to have it be an information item, or however the general manager would care to deal with it.
Yeah, we have gotten some of those. We are pulling some of those together. I would like your finance director to focus on the audit and get the audit done, and then bring those around like at the first of the year.
Yeah, I would like to get, like I said, I think it's something I would like to have it either at the beginning of when we start doing budgets or before the budget, but yeah, definitely after the audit's over with.
Okay. Well, nobody's
And another thing too, are we gonna bring the rotations back? Is that at the next meeting? Okay. That's for the chair
Right.
rotation.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to skip Jolene. Okay, well, if we don't have anything else, I think we're ready for adjournment.
So moved.